have been out collecting signatures to ensure this supercity is stopped. So let's keep that momentum going. Let's not burden the region and its residents with the high unnecessary cost. Because what hasn't been said about the Auckland region, the Auckland Council, on behalf of its ratepayers, is paying $1 million a day in interest charges. $1 million. And there will be, and Fran has said that there'll be some winners and losers. Well, I don't want to be one of the losers that's going to be paying 40% increase in their rates. And I've had this from the council, 3,734 ratepayers will see a 40% increase in their rates. You're going to see 110,000 with, see, I'm getting all excited now, thanks Trevor, I'm big into that last page. I'm only on page 2. 120 will see 10 or 20%. That's not what we want here. I'm for smart democracy. I'm for smart change, smart progress. Thank you, Fran. I was quiet while you spoke. Please give me the courtesy. I support a region. I will support a prosperous region, and a proposal, this proposal in front of us, does none of that. Our region deserves the best, as has been said, and a supercity is not the answer.
Right, we're now going to have questions. And same story, Chris is going to read them out. I think he's going to try and get them so that they go sort of roughly to each side. We're going to work with individual teams to make sure that we get like one answer from a team, not a series of them. Most questions we won't need both teams to give an answer to. We'll only need one. And I'm going to run, to encourage people to be succinct, I'm going to run the time up, and the timer will run for 1 minute. You don't need to take a minute to answer a question, but that's the maximum that you're allowed. Over to you, Chris.
All right, so I've selected from the questions, the first couple of questions I've selected are broadly representative of themes that many people have raised. So I'll ask one speaker from each side to comment on these first questions, because they are broadly representative of quite a few of the questions that people have put in. So the first question is, if greater consistency in planning is one of the goals of amalgamation, why can't that be achieved through councils working better together now, or through government, through greater involvement of central government through things like policy statements under the RMA or even legislation? Why does council amalgamation need to happen for those things to take place?
And from now on, I'll start it, not when you start answering, but when you get the question right.
Actually, it's a good question. I similarly asked the same thing. Why couldn't we do it under the current structure? But what we've seen over the years is an inability to do it, because when push comes to shove, councils won't give away the ability to make decisions on a regional basis. They want to keep it local. And when it comes to planning, what we know is our needs are regional. If you look at the spatial plan for Auckland and the ability for the Auckland Council to make decisions really quickly, resource decisions, and engage with government on really big infrastructure and public transport questions, those things happen because it's one body having to make the decision. As we saw in Wellington, particular councils killed any chance with the Wellington Regional Strategy to actually make decisions on landform and growth because they wouldn't buy into a regional plan. That's what kills it.
While I might have agreed with Nick a number of years ago, the actual facts speak for themselves. This region has got its act together. We've now merged economic development, we've now merged water, we've now merged our emergency management. I believe this can be done, and sitting down with the commitment of the mayoral forum and the council, sitting down and doing this without throwing the baby out with the bath water. We can look at that. The actual facts speak for themselves. It said it couldn't be done with water. It's been done. It couldn't be done with economic development, and we've just now, only in the last couple of months, established a new economic development forum, which the lady that keeps talking over here to my right is actually I think the deputy chair of. So if she hasn't got confidence in the organisation, I have to wonder why is it that she puts herself forward for these roles.
All right, the second question, which again is broadly reflective of quite a number of questions or statements, in fact, that people wrote down. The majority of the speakers tonight are currently involved in Wellington local government. Is this proposal an admission that you cannot and are not working well together now?
So first.
Well, the answer to that's clearly we are. The fact of the matter is that I can tell you the term that I've been mayor over the last 4 or 5 years, the regions never work more closely together. The only thing that'll fracture this region is continual debate about a supercity, and that will hinder it. If you talk to the people in the Hawke's Bay, they went through that a few years ago, and they said some of those divisions are still there. So, but from the point of view of the Wellington region, there's no reason whatsoever.
Yes, we do a lot of things well together, but there's a whole lot of things that we should be doing well together that we're not. It's important to talk about the water entity, Wellington Water. That's a front-end delivery organisation. All the assets are still owned by the councils, the individual councils. That means that all of the big spending decisions are made by the individual councils. That is not an amalgamation. That is not that's not actually the model that's going to work for Wellington. Hutt Valley, you've got half the vacant industrial land in the region. We all need to be able to help you fill that. We actually have got Wellington City wanting to put in a new greenfield site at Lincolnshire Farms with a population of 30,000. Is that going to help the Hutt Valley? No, it's not. We need to be able to do these things together as a region. So we're saying we can do better. We shouldn't just be sitting around saying, I'm all right, Jack.
Question number 3. Can the promoters assure us that the uncontrolled, i.e. non-elected, council-controlled organisations will not eventually, as in the Auckland Supercity, take over everything?
Well, we don't want CCOs and interested...
No, well, where you go?
So this is a really good one because Fran and I are actually not pro-CCO people. In Auckland, I think, is not great. You see that guy on the front page of the Herald on the weekend who was sent, Auckland's representative in London. That was a decision made by a CCO. It wouldn't have been made if the Auckland Council Chief Executive had that decision because he's directly accountable. We've heard tonight both Ray and Wayne talk about alternatives to the proposal we've got in front of us. We didn't hear any detail, but I do know a lot of the detail they talk about. What they mean is more CCOs tip everything into a company like Wellington Water, which is good because you have to cooperate. We were happy to cooperate, but all it does, it's an advice body. It's an extra layer of bureaucracy, and it is further away from communities' ability to influence it because it's got a private board, it's got a board of businessmen. So if you want that, everything, all the services tipped into regional companies, by all means, go for the alternative, go for status quo with a bit of change. But to me and to us, any large council of the region shouldn't have to have CCOs because it would be a big enough entity to administer those regional local services itself.
All right, we now move to questions for a couple of questions for either side. So for the people opposed to local government amalgamation, within an amalgamated authority, there'd be potential for a well-resourced, unified plan. Currently, territorial local authorities tend to under-resource district plan compliance. Why wouldn't the community be better off with only one authority and one plan?
Well, that's a very good question, and can I just tell you that there's been a lot made about the spatial planning in Auckland, and that it's panacea and that everyone has to actually follow it. What you might not know, and it's a very important fact, that I think it was 7 or 9 of the councillors actually wrote to the Prime Minister asking for the spatial plan process to cease because they felt it was getting out of control and not in line with the community. So I wouldn't hold that up as the particular great one. The other issue is that we've heard a lot about the boards, and I know Wayne and Nick have made quite a bit, and Fran has made quite a bit about the boards. At the end of the day, my Scottish heritage always says, read the fine print. And it's all subject to sign off by the major council. So if it's not in line with the major council's policy, there won't be any funding and there won't be any plan. Be assured of that.
All right. A question to the proponents. Youth councils in the Wellington region are weak and the only model allowing direct discourse with council by the under 25s. The Supercity model renders the current councils useless. How does this proposal assure and protect the youth voice in their own communities?
You've got the old guy to answer this one.
It's a really good question. And what I think we get the opportunity for under the proposal is to have a reflection of youth identity and involvement at a local level, through local communities, and at a regional level. And once again, you're looking at education, skills and training on a regional basis as one particular issue, but also on a local basis. So I think there's actually the ability for strength and cooperation. So I see this as really exciting for young people. Can I also talk about Auckland? They've got an initiative there that the one council was able to put together, and that's called the Southern Initiative. And that is about looking at where the future workforce lives in what is now Auckland City, which is South Auckland. They're young, they are often living in low-income areas, and the council is putting resource, the whole council is putting resource to ensuring those kids have access to education and they're really in workforce development and ensuring that they're as healthy and as equipped as possible for their futures. And that's what we have the ability to do with a regional resource on these sort of issues. Get the politician talking, can't stop.
All right, we've had a lot of questions on debt. So if I could summarise that broadly, I think that the tone of the questions on debt was, will this amalgamation proposal result in debts from one area being covered, or ratepayers in another area having to pay off the debts from one of the other areas? So perhaps if I could ask each side to have one speaker on that.
We'll start. Derek's going to go.
Having a go because I'm not a politician, but Chairman Mao said seek truth from facts. As far as debt's concerned, the proposal says that it looked very closely at the possibility of having a targeted rate so that within the areas that had debt, that could be, the debt servicing could be targeted to that area. They rejected it on the basis that it was a much fairer proposal outcome to share the debt across the region. Yes, hang on, please hang on. Because, and also, there are assets against which debt and future debt will be serviced. Hutt City has no capital assets of any consequence. Upper Hutt doesn't either. They both have fairly low debt. Wellington City has more debt, but it has more capital assets and a greater ability to raise rates, to service rates, to meet those capital assets, which would become assets for the region.
Clearly, the proposal says that the debt will go across the whole region, and every ratepayer will pay their share. I mean, the fact of the matter is, remember, what intrigues me sometimes when you hear the proponents of the ones, there will still be the same number of ratepayers. It won't be developing another pool of money, but the fact of the matter is it's spread across the region.
Here we go, we're back again. I've got a question that's been handed to me specifically for Fran, and that's around the number of people being employed by the Auckland City Council, which you mentioned it's decreased. What has been the effect on the overall salary bill? Hasn't it just resulted in more highly paid managers?
So the Auckland numbers employed That's the actual real count of numbers of staff. Interestingly, on day one, a lot of the councils were contracting out much of their services. North Shore had most of their services, I understand, contracted out. They pulled them back in-house again, and that would have been a saving in itself. I heard the number about the numbers of staff on 100,000 plus. I don't have a number on that, but I can tell you that in a market which is going absolutely crazy like Auckland at the moment, I suspect that salaries for the council to be competitive simply reflect the market that they're in. And Wellington is not like that, so I wouldn't imagine that would be anything like what's happening in Auckland with 1.5 million people and the growth that they are having there, which is phenomenal.
All right, next question.
We're down to about the last three, Chris,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. Currently, local councils are often forced into environmentally beneficial actions that are imposed by Greater Wellington consents. Under a unified council arrangement, how will the potential conflict between the needs of the environment and infrastructure managers' wishes be managed?
I think that goes back to you guys.
The environmental consents on that large scale and the infrastructure on a large scale would be managed regionally. So that would be managed at a regional level, not at a local level. I think the water CCO is a very interesting example of this, where they are already working closely with the regional council on the big consents and the new plan that we're developing, which HUT obviously will be part of, and so will the rest of the region. And that's where they'll be resolved. So I don't see a problem with that. I think that that would be something that would be beneficial, actually, having them looking at the wider catchment rather than just a little part of the catchment, and having the big infrastructure providers being at the table and having to also understand the environmental needs, which are very big in Wellington.
All right, last question, because I've tried very much to summarise the overall tone of the questions, but this topic hasn't been mentioned yet, and that is for the proponents, if they could comment on the likely impact on the rates of rural residents within the region.
Councils have many different funding tools available as apart from rates. They have uniform annual charges, they have user charges, there are targeted rates, there are all sorts of different things. Depends on the rural differential, and I don't think anyone can say that now. But in terms of the previous discussion about rates and Auckland, I think it's really important to remember what I said earlier, that the big increases, and some were huge, were because the system of rating was changed from land value to capital value. Virtually everyone in the Wellington region is already on capital value. So those huge swings wouldn't be seen here. There were many people in Auckland who also had rates decreases, as I said, but you never hear about them. So I think in terms of rating, Kapiti is the only one that's currently on land value, and there would be changes in Kapiti, but the rest of the rates would be, the changes would be far less. Rural differential depends on what the differential is, and the new council will decide that.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. We're now coming to the point where I think we say thank you very much to the people who've done the presentations and invite them to take chairs back maybe at the front of the audience in a more listening mode. And it's the opportunity for people from the floor to have their say. What we're going to do is do it by moving around a bit. I'm going to have one mic, and I'll ask, which I'll mainly do people down the front. I'll ask Chris to do down the back. I'll ask the people who are controlling up there to watch out pretty quickly for my signal, because when people have had their minute, their mics are going to be turned off. Okay, because I think that's probably the way of doing it pretty fairly. Now, who'd like to start by making a comment? Yeah, have to stay there. Have to stay there. Right. I've got one down here first, Chris. And people can identify themselves and where they're from. So we'll try and get a bit of a spread.
G'day, I'm Bob. I'm from Wainui. Now, we talk a lot about rate increases. Fran mentioned 9% increase. We talk about ratepayers paying their share. There's a pool of ratepayers that's not going to change. Well, then why is it that the ratepayers and the homeowners should be the only ones who should have a say whether we want Supercity or don't want Supercity, because we're paying for the bloody thing. And I feel that other people, they're just coming along for the ride. Therefore, it's up to the ratepayers and the homeowners to say yes or no. End of story.
Trevor, can they stand up, please?
Right, we will ask people to stand up.
Just from the meeting tonight, I got the feeling that something's already been decided here. You talk about the water being a commodity and that, so is it earmarked for sale? Are you going to sell the water, to a private enterprise? And that's a major concern, because we all need water. Are there going to be water meters and everything placed around? So what Jim Bolger said, it won't be another tax, it'll be a surcharge. So your rates won't go up, but you'll be just charged another surcharge. There's lots of questions on that you guys just haven't answered tonight, and quite dismal about the meeting actually. I feel like it's already been decided. You talked too about another 30,000 people being earmarked in some place in Lower Hutt. Well, it sounds to me like you've already had the discussions and you already talked about this, and whatever we're doing here, that doesn't matter. The Commission's going to make a ruling, and that'll be it. I mean, you're just getting like government. They haven't listened to us for the last 20 years either.
Jill Berridge, Western Community Committee. Fran, I'm really intrigued as to why you're sabotaging your own regional council, because they wouldn't exist under Supercity, and actually I think they're doing a sterling job. I'm not actually, in the past I haven't been a big fan of regional, but over 4 or 5 terms, I've realised they do an amazing job in terms of floodway, in terms of regional council management, and we really don't understand how these land management boards and how the Maori boards will work. So, I don't think we've had much beyond rhetoric from your side of the team.
I've been involved in the Hutt City debates around there, and my good friend Councillor Wallace, we actually agree with each other now. But what happened in the old days when Hutt City was established, we developed a holistic approach to funding. And we actually, it took 2 years when the amalgamation took place to actually bring rates down. So how many years is it going to take if we do amalgamate to bring rates down? The other point I want to make, and I'm very passionate about, why do you people think you have the right to take away the legal status from Hutt City of local authority? And we won't have councillors, but we will have board members.
Hi, I'm Casey. I haven't lived in the Hutt Valley all my life yet because, I haven't had much of a life yet. But look at all these people. All these people, a lot of them have lived in the Hutt all their life. They've lived in Wellington all their life. They've paid their taxes. They've paid their rates. They've paid to play. And now you want to go around and just change it all. You want it all changed, and it's not clear how you want to change it. And one day I'm going to have a family. And I want to pay reasonable taxes. I want to pay reasonable rates. I want them to have the best opportunity possible. And I'm sorry, but I have not been convinced to put my future family in the hands of number crunchers and people who have been in the job for only 3 weeks. I prefer to put it in the hands of people who have lived in the Hutt and lived in Wellington all their lives and have worked hard, worked the 40-hour weeks, worked in construction, in butcheries, lived there. I'm not going to put it in the hands of people who are going to throw numbers at me. I'm going to put it in the hands of people that actually do the hard work.
Just before we go to the next one, can we just remember that Emma came here, because someone was sick, and it's not fair to have people who came to fill in for someone else to give us information. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Stephen Jones.
Thank you, Emma.
I know how Auckland infrastructure works. I work with them all the time. It's not working. It's costing a fortune. They keep saying it works. It doesn't work. They've got no money. They keep borrowing money. Who's going to pay the money back? That's what's going to end up happening here if we're going to go along the same lines as they're doing in Auckland. We have to be careful what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. Just have a good look at what's happening in Auckland.
Hi, I'm Jay. I'm from the Voice Youth Advisory. We're an independent youth advisory in the Hutt Valley. I'm also Trevor's former youth MP, and Lord knows we don't agree on some things, but that's what we do. And I've got to say, if there's anything we all know here, it's that a Wellingtonian certainly cannot run the Hutt Valley. Never run the Hutt Valley, and shouldn't run the Hutt Valley. I mean, it is hard enough as a young person. 25% of the city is under 25. And it is so hard, I'm sorry Ray, but to get to the council and get our opinions heard, how hard is it going to be when we've got a council full of people who aren't even from here to have an issue like secret level discussed, level-handedly with our opinions presented? It's not going to happen. We don't want to be cleaning up the mess of the Local Government Commission in 20 years when we have to take the reins from you. Come on.
Nice.